Ah,
Hi.
just as we went live, I realized there was something I really need to tell you two in private. So
Well,
please
there's only
don't go
300
away
people watching.
when we finish.
You could hint. You could pretend. Like you
yeah.
could hint. We could try and piece it together.
It's
Anyway, hello
it's
guys.
annoying because- hello everybody. It's annoying because it's fresh in my mind and I have all that kind of joy attached to wanting to share it. So I warn you, I'm on the Baraka, so this could get a little bit wild and woolly.
No, I'm
sure
on the Monster.
I'm
Our
sure
on the
sponsor,
tea.
Monster Energy Drink.
we'll see the words. We'll see the words. Let Helen talk at some point in the chat. It's only because we're all so excited because each one of us is even more brilliant than the last person, and we just.
But we're like none of us really care what each other's saying. We just want to talk. So we're all.
Yes, I can't remember. I can't remember the comedian who did it, but it's like basically, your brain goes, "It's my turn, my turn." Doodle-doo-doo-doo. What's Helen saying? Look like you're paying attention. It's sorry, Helen.
Excellent.
That is a skill I'm afraid you do have to develop as a husband sometimes. But anyway, I told you it's the Baraka. It's the Baraka. So
he's already doing it, guys. All right.
What a week! What a month!
I think a fortnight or so. Yes, quite astounding. So where do we start today?
Yeah, it's tricky when we're 2 weeks apart because we forget what we did on the last one and what we didn't.
So today, well, yesterday, I guess the announcement that they are. It's very likely, I think it looks to me, going to actually make it very clear that the Equality Act relates to biological sex.
Yes, amazing.
Did you see that, Archie?
I saw some of that last night. Yes.
And I think Sunak has said, he's quite committed to this and has put Kemi Badenoch on it. And the EHRC are obviously all over it, and they've written that long letter, which I think, it's thoughtful. It says that there are things to consider. That are so that they want to do some research around or some policy thinking about it, because there are things to consider, but it's really quite clear that they are pretty sure that they're going to do it. And honestly, if they'd have done this right at the bloody beginning, like 6 or 7 years ago, could have saved us a lot of hassle, because so much of this has just been arguing about misinformation, hasn't it?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. I mean, we spend, whenever we hear a story like the recent shooter in this trans school shooter, the first 6 hours is spent trying to figure out the sex of the person, and I remember like when everybody saw the photographs of her coming into the school, all the feminists were saying, that's a man, stop calling it a woman. It was a woman, but it was a trans-identified woman who they call a man. So you have to negotiate this nonsense because the press has a policy of fucking agreeing with self-identification to
well, I think, the press, I think though the press is slightly different. I mean, you're right. I mean, and that was a fucking terrible thing. But you're right about the press, but maybe, they could follow suit. But this one, I think, is going to be really clear on spaces and I think discrimination policies, just to make it clear what Stonewall has deliberately obfuscated. They've deliberately muddied the waters, and the governments have just not wanted to clarify it. But I think that they finally said, yeah, fuck it, let's just do it.
But the EHRC put out that letter basically saying that affirming that sex refers to biological sex and that the Equality Act refers to biological sex was somehow a new thing rather than just affirming an existing thing. Wasn't that the way they framed it? I thought that was really, really strange. I think that, I don't think that was necessary at all. It sounds like it was just a sop to the lobby and a sop to people who, because over the last few years we've gotten confused about this, as if this is a new thing. We're going to introduce this thing called biological sex. We're not.
Well, I think the problem is that the Equality Act, if you read it, it talks. There's a mixture of sex and gender in there, plus which I think is just this because we've gone down the road of saying sex and gender have different meanings when for ages gender was just a way of being polite and not having to say the word sex so that little kids wouldn't go if you said sex.
Exactly. Yeah.
But there's also the parts that talk, but there's also the conflict between the gender reassignment people and women. So I think it's just going to try and clarify everything. But I think what's going to be clear is that it'll absolutely make the point that women, that there can be spaces where it's just women, like just biological women. And I think that's what people like Stonewall have tried to pretend that is against the law. And I'm still not sure how, if captured institutions will roll back or not.
Well, here's the thing that I think it feels to me that the emphasis in this recent announcement was on what harm it's doing to the economy, because of course we're all this stuff is burning up tons of court time. It's burning up, it's the Scottish government is being sued. I can't remember who. There's a few other groups that are being sued. Open University is being sued. All these places are putting themselves in danger of litigation. They're just walking into these huge. They think they're in the right. I mean, I think one thing I hope happens is that some of these companies, turn around and sue Stonewall.
Yeah, it would be great.
Yeah,
but if you look at the Equality Act, the whole point of the Equality Act in the first place to talk about gender reassignment was that back then we knew that sex and gender reassignment were two very different things. It went without saying. So the wording of the Equality Act referred to men and women as if we always knew what those were going to be. It's been a recent thing, a kind of new strategy to try to undermine those words. Instead of introducing more rights for a separate group of people who've had gender reassignment, instead they tried, let's just undermine the word woman and try to weasel our way into women's spaces that way. Yes. So it would be nice to see that finally headed off. Because when the Equality Act was introduced, what was it, 2004 it was introduced? No, 2000. No, that was the Gender Recognition
2010.
Act. 2010, that's right. Yeah. Back then, I don't think they were anticipating that those words would have to be firmly asserted to be associated with biological sex. That just went without saying. And that's the same strategy that's been going on in the United States with Title IX. Title IX is this great big set of laws that has to do with equalities for women in universities. And what the Obama administration began to do, and what the Biden administration is continuing to do, is just not introducing new sections to Title IX to help people with gender reassignment, but just hacking the word woman and saying that means, changing the definition of the word woman. So this whole strategy of just hacking the definition of the word is something that needs to be stopped and addressed. So I'm glad to see it finally addressed, because it was kind of a loophole. Kind of a way for Stonewall to get anything they want by just redefining the word, instead of actually bringing in new legislation that is specifically targeted at a specific group of people. Because to do that, you'd have to define a specific group of people. You'd have to actually materially distinguish between a man and a trans woman, someone who's actually had gender reassignment surgery.
Yes, I did. It was quite the sort of the left field attack, wasn't it? To actually pretend that suddenly that nobody had ever known what the difference was, and that actually for somehow we were all inspecting people's genitals at the door.
Yeah, and the even idea that sex was real was, what was it, unworthy of respect in a democratic society? All of a sudden,
yeah.
Which is odd, isn't it?
You were gonna, God damn it! I've lost my train of thought. Shit.
I wanted to say something about the news regarding the transgender shooter. Because it did take us hours to figure out whether it was a male or a female, because I think some of the media was throwing away their rule.
Yes,
because it was a woman and not a man. They wanted to add extra sympathy to her or something by denying that this was a real transgender person. Or they wanted to take this issue away from transgender. So they were trying to suddenly not assert this person's gender identity.
And
So it's even
also-
more confusing when half the people are saying this is a man and half the people are saying this is a woman, and you're trying to figure out what their political views are, so you can figure out
True.
whether they're asserting a biological truth, whether
think
they're
in part,
asserting someone's
though-
gender expectation, or some mix of the both. You know.
I think in part though it was because it's the story is more shocking if you tell the truth, which is that it's a woman, because it's never a woman.
Yeah.
So I think when it but they just want to do what sells, and actually trolling and saying, oh, look at this woman, look at this woman,
violent
paedophile,
woman.
where we
Yeah.
know, like, oh, this woman rapist, like we all fucking know. So it's just it's
men.
clickbait,
It's
isn't
mostly
it?
men.
But this
Yeah,
one,
But
this
also,
one, they wanted to tell the truth because it's more of a shocking story.
But also,
Mhm.
but also, it's just smoothing the message. Like at the moment, the Biden administration have made absolute fools of themselves over this issue. It has turned them into a laughing stock. Some of the things they've been doing. Actually, I'm not sure if it was Biden or Canada, but did anyone see the drag queen signing?
That
The,
was Canada. That was Canada. That was
What
really
happened?
quite-
What happened in my?
Oh, it's so funny, Artie. It's a bunch of
God.
drag queens, and I
hope it's
believe
not people I know.
possibly a drag king. I could be wrong, but one looked like a drag king. And they are just kind of standing around as someone signs something into law, looking like the cast of the George Lucas prequels. Just like really kind of serious, and
I mean,
they've got
it just
giant
looks so out of
giant
place, really.
Cher type hairdos, and one's really small. He's got a huge Zapata mustache. Oh, it's the funniest thing. It makes no sense, But but anyway, but back to my original point. The Biden administration it's all in on this. It's all in.
But they're all in until they're not. They're always this, especially when it comes to
but there was
female to male trans people, because we know they're women and we keep admitting it. In a university in Canada, there was I think it was a grant that was being offered to women only. And their criteria for what is a woman was trans woman, non-binary person, or a trans man.
Yeah.
So if you're a trans man, oh, you're still a woman. We all know it. We're not going to exclude you. But if you're a trans woman, it's like, oh, you're not a man. Forget that.
I know. I mean, it's just the most brilliantly kind of flexible ideology, but it always benefits men in the end. There's a brilliant, I don't know, we all remember the fantastic story about Benji going to Morgan Page's LGBT youth class, where at one point the older trans-identified men told these like 16, 17-year-old girls who were trans men, right? These are women who think they're men.
And 14, yeah.
Yeah, and 14. As young as 14, were they? Right.
It was 13 was the cutoff, yeah.
Fucking hell. And they're in this youth group, LGBT youth group, with all these men in their 20s and 30s. And the men were telling the women, the trans men, okay? I know it's hard to follow. So those of you who are not used to this debate, but the men, the trans women, the men were telling the women, the trans men, that they had male privilege and they should not talk so much.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, it's in. If you want to see it, have a look at the interview with Benji that Benjamin. What's Benjamin's second name? He just wrote to me and it's jumped out of my head. Boyce. Benjamin Boyce. Boyce did with Benji. He did a few with her, but the one about Morgan Page's LGBT youth group. And remember, Morgan Page is still on the Stonewall website. Google it now and you'll see. That one is truly shocking. That is pure grooming what went on.
It's also shocking, isn't it? And again, the Overton window has really shifted. They've done a really good job of shifting the Overton window so that shocking things they're just commonplace.
Normalized.
And again, I'm still thinking that we've woken up after there's been this massive virus and there's a few of us who aren't affected, and we're all looking around saying,
yeah.
Why is everyone going along with this?
Yeah.
Why are
I think
they?
it's all got to do with this whole flipping of the establishment versus the anti-establishment. The left is on top now. We have the banks, we have the cops, we have the president, we have everything. But we're pretending like we're underdogs, just like those men saying, "Oh, you have male privilege." No, you still have male privilege. They're pretending they're the underdogs when they have all the power. Ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, I love that virus theory. I've heard other theories that we've all died and this is hell. That's the other one. What's
A new play by Camus.
yeah,
Gender.
exactly. It's like what the fuck happened? Bowie dies, Prince dies, and everyone goes insane. It's like they were like,
Oh, we needed
like-
them.
they were like policemen who were stopping people from going too crazy by showing, hey, look, men can be anything they want, anything at all, right? And then they died, and everyone went, people who wear makeup are women.
Oh my god,
know?
it's so true. They were the last bastions.
Yeah, they were the guardians of the
But I think,
of the gender.
but what might be, but so the Equality Act change. I mean, it's not going to change everything, but what it might do is bring back a part of sort of normality, because we can't just point at it and say, no, you're wrong. I mean, I know we've been able to point at lots of things in the past and say, no, you're wrong, and somebody just tweets some blogs saying, no, this proves sex is a spectrum. It proves it beyond any shadow of a doubt. And puberty blockers are reversible. Yeah, have this ridiculous blog. But nevertheless, you can still, hopefully, we will still be able to go back and say, no, look, it's very clear here that women can have their own spaces. Lesbians can have their own groups. We can't exclude men. We can't exclude biological men.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what we need. Honestly, they prevaricated for so long and said, no, it's all okay. And then everyone's like, oh, it's a culture war. And genuinely, we could have avoided, like, as you were saying about the cost. Think of all of the activism cost.
Yeah.
Like we could have been activizing. I don't know what was the word. We could have been doing lots of other things instead. Like, and women have had to be. I mean, and men as well, but women have had to be bloody slogging along for years.
Posey nearly got killed.
There was never a fucking problem.
Posey nearly got killed. Posey nearly got killed because of this. This stupid shite. And all we've been doing all along the way is saying, use your fucking heads. It's clear what will happen. It's clear what will happen if you put men in women's prisons. It's clear what will happen if you use self-identification. Use your heads before someone is hurt. And Posey was nearly fucking killed. It really annoys me.
And it was, and the reaction was really interesting, wasn't it? As a friend of mine, but as a friend of mine pointed out, like somebody like Billy Bragg, that's all he's been doing is tweeting about Nazis, and you're like, what? Like, as a friend of mine pointed out, if you're going to invoke the spectre of actual literal Nazis, I mean, you might as well make the point that the people that Bragg is defending behaved worse than actual literal Nazis did.
Yeah.
Because all they did was turn up and salute. Like the TRAs were actually violent, actually properly
also
violent towards women.
Yeah, everyone's ignoring the fact that there were a bunch of Nazis that turned up, and they might as well have been invisible to the people who call themselves Antifa.
Exactly.
They had no interest.
No, I know.
Nazis,
Yeah, the anti-fascists didn't care about the fascists. They just wanted to attack women. A bunch of fascists showed up, and there's the anti-fascists, and they couldn't care less.
It's funny that, and there's two reasons for that. Okay, and neither of them good. Reason number one is they're cowards who only attack women, which is true. And reason number two is that the fascists were actually other members of Antifa. They certainly looked like them. So why did Antifa not attack the fascists? That's the big question that I don't think enough people have been asking. No.
Well, I think the big thing about that, though, is that this was such a clear example of the media insiders being in their own bubble and the outside world not buying it. I think despite all people like Billy Bragg saying Nazis, a lot of press articles smearing Posey as some kind of Nazi, that's just so egregious. It's insults to the reader's intelligence. People aren't buying it. I think it's calling a lot of attention to the fact that there's a problem here, because I think a lot of people who might think, okay, trans women are in trouble, and there's this woman named Posey and she's mean to them, and then they read an article about calling her a Nazi because a bunch of assholes showed up, and it's so obviously not true. It's so obviously the way
May
that
I
he was
say
framed is
something
not
about
true,
that
that a lot
particular?
of people are like, okay, that's bullshit, you know?
Yeah, well, look, here's the problem, though. I think that is true. I think that is true, but there is a slight bump in the road, okay, in terms of people acknowledging it. There are some people on our side who have consistently told lies about Posey, and they've consistently associated her with the right and with fascists. And there is, as far as I can see, and I've been looking, zero evidence for this beyond the kind of excerpted things that you get from trans rights activists. I'll give you an example. People would send me Posey Parker's avatar that had the Barbie dressed as a Nazi, so Nazi Barbie. She put that in her avatar as a joke because someone on our side called her that, So I just feel that I really wish that there's certain people who need to just kind of suck it up and say, you know what, fog of war, fog of war. I may have believed something that wasn't true. I may have passed on something that wasn't true, but it's shocking to me how far it got. As I say, she was nearly killed, and all she's ever done is put a microphone in front of women. She's put a microphone in front of women, and no one remembers these women. These women, they get terrified and beaten up, and all the chatter is about Posey, and all she does is stand up and fucking give them the microphone. It's disgraceful. Sorry.
No,
you're angry.
But it occurs to me that even if a woman was massively right wing, still she should still be allowed to talk, and nobody should be.
I've never heard
perpetrating violence.
I've never heard politics at her events. I only hear women from all walks of life who have been terribly affected by this absurd cult ideology. Like, for instance, the woman whose 12-year-old child was taken away from her, a child who's being transitioned against her will by the father. It's and she gets like reams of abuse when she tells her story online, thousands of messages just calling her a bad mother and all this sort of stuff. We just want adults to come into the room and defend that woman so we can stop doing it. We just and that's the brilliant thing about the EHRC thing. That's all we wanted. So adults to come in and say, yeah, this is true, this is not true. We're not playing this stupid kids game anymore, which is what it is.
I think there's going to be a round two, though. With the EHRCs asserting that, biological sexes are what the Equality Act meant, there's still the round of trans women are biologically female. There's still going to be a war around whether declaring your pronouns to be different changes your literal biological sex. We've been seeing that creeping up more and more over the last few years. I think when this show started almost 3 years ago, that still to me was shocking when someone said, my penis is literally a vagina, or I'm literally female. And a lot of people, I think just 1 or 2 years ago, somebody tweeted, of course, we're not saying they're literally female. But now that's much more common. It's much more common for people to say, because they've been undermining the very definition of biological sex.
Oh, it's not only
Myers,
common.
a biologist who's pretending that sex is a spectrum. And and sex is complicated. And therefore, somehow, an autogynephile is literally female. He never explains how you get from A to B, but he always says that door is open, So we're going to see that probably as the next step. We'll have to be fighting on that front,
Oh, they'll never back down because the stakes are so high. Like, basically, here's what I always want to make sure I'm very clear when I say this. This is a huge scandal where children were hurt, and a whole generation of kids may have been very, very badly hurt indeed. And all along the way, we've had spokesmen like Aidan Comerford and Katie Montgomery and Robin Moore-White and all these people. And all they've been doing is saying, no, these are necessary interventions. We must do them. They're life-saving. They'll save these children's lives. And they didn't know what they were fucking talking about. They were spoofing because they want to go into the ladies' toilets. Now,
they didn't care. It's not that they didn't know what they were talking about. They didn't care. They were prepared to lie. They were absolutely prepared to lie about kids and around kids, and they didn't care what happened to kids. They genuinely didn't. Like, we saw it happen, and we saw it like from the ground. We saw it happen. We saw people just push this in order to, like I've said so many times before. There were these guys saying, "Oh, if I could have been put on puberty blockers when I was a child, it would have been the best thing. That's what I've always wanted." And you're like, "You're here because you weren't, for God's sake,
Yeah.
because it's like part of your sex drive. Had you been put on puberty blockers, you'd never have got here."
Yeah, there's an element of like, I think the word is disinhibition. There's just a certain amount, and it seems to be much more common among men than among women. We live in a world of sort of norms in civilized society where we would not cross people's boundaries. We're trying to be polite to each other. There are a lot of men who don't live in that world. Their primary motivation isn't to get along with other people, it's to satisfy their sex drive. And they're uninhibited around violating people's boundaries. They're uninhibited around doing things that would be harmful to society. This is why prisons are full of men and not women. This is why the entire police force is just there, because it's a huge percentage of the male population that doesn't give a shit about society and fucks things up for everyone else. We have like a huge percentage of the entire civilization's budget, every government in the world, is to keep track of this 10% of men who are criminals, basically, who don't know how to behave. And a lot of these men have sexual desires and they don't care. They would literally take a baby and throw it directly into a furnace if somebody said, if you do this, you can, can go into the women's
go where
toilets.
you want. You can go where you want. I mean,
it's just, we have to recognize that we live in a world where men behave badly all the time. I don't understand why people don't see that.
Sorry, Helen. Yeah.
It's because it's the water we swim in, isn't it? It's the air that we breathe. It's always been that way, and people are prepared to excuse it. People are. That's what's really shocked me, is that a lot of men, and this is why the fight has been so difficult, because it's been mainly just sort of normal women who are actually just sort of rational and reasonable against very sort of boundary violating narcissists. And so the fight is so skewed in that you've got people who are prepared to look you in the eyes and completely lie, and that's really shocking if you're just a normal rational person who believes that actually the way to get things done is rational engagement.
Well, that's one thing. That's one thing I really love about. Sorry, Helen, go on.
And then it's been like a massive takeover, because you're just sort of left there saying, but what about this? And then, but because people are prepared to lie, the 6 of one, half a dozen of the other is like Glossfish wrote a really good article about this thing today. No, we've always been reasonable and rational. It's not sort of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It is actually 12 of one and nothing of the other. And it's always been like that. It has always been like that. So, like Starmer coming in and saying, "Oh, okay, well, maybe this and that." No, like we've always been reasonable and rational.
Yeah.
Well,
no, I mean,
further though. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say one of the satisfying things about being back on Twitter, and one of the reasons why I used to, it was very powerful for me before I was thrown off. And I think the reason I was thrown off, part of the reason I was thrown off, is because I would always amplify the abuse that people were getting. I would always amplify the ridiculous arguments, the bogus talking points, all those thought terminating cliches. Like, oh, I heard one recently. I love this. I didn't hear you talking much about circumcision, as if circumcision is equivalent to getting your cock cut off, Someone replied and said, if circumcision is castrating you, you didn't have a lot to get on with in the first place, But it's like these arguments just keep kind of coming in.
Oh, that argument especially. You know what I want to see? I get so angry sometimes when I see these men. I saw a tweet of some guy. He works in a school of some kind, and he's running this kind of like secret underground railroad where he's proudly transing all the kids in his school behind the teachers' backs or something. Made my skin crawl. But I wish there was something called dick escrow, where if you want a child to have a sex change and you think it's going to be great for them, then you put your dick in escrow. And if that child loses their dick because of the surgery and then comes to regret it, you need to give them your dick. You need to have your dick transplanted to them, because what they're doing is they're playing with other people's dicks. They're risking other people. They're risking other people's bodies instead of their own. It's so easy to say that other person should have their genitals removed because you don't care if it works out or not, because it's not your problem. But when you make them gamble their own cock, that makes them think twice.
It's
that
an
makes them go,
interesting
shit, wait a minute,
Yeah. And if we
put your dick on the line, if you want a child to have a sex change and you're so sure that they're gonna like it, well, you better fucking put your dick where your mouth is, like I don't know what this you know what I mean, like
genuinely
Here's
that
an
is an
idea.
excellent quote, and I really do hope somebody actually does capture that and it goes all viral.
and
I'm
then
angry. I
and
genuinely think if you
Yes.
and
so
then
good
we
at
can
sex
get
changes, you risk your dick,
Yeah, we get it, and then we could get all the dicks, right, and we can put them in a dick museum and build it next to the vagina museum.
Which I think is gone anyway.
Oh, is it?
Because
Okay.
Perfect. We'll move
Yeah,
in. It'll be the dick
because
escrow.
it turns out they didn't like people with vaginas.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's right.
I think Ati, interesting sort of thinking like around it, notwithstanding. I think you're absolutely right. It is just like we were saying, the older trans women who are like, oh, if only I could have had this surgery when I was a kid, if only I could have been put on puberty blockers, all sort of the
If only could have lost my sexual function.
Yeah, exactly. Like, no, you're absolutely right. People who, that are like these people who just cheer on saying, oh, puberty blockers are completely reversible. It's, they don't know what they're talking about, or they do, and they're saying it anyway. And again, I'm going to refer to Glosswich's excellent article again today. I'm going to put a link underneath the video afterwards, because I think it's really good. She says, politically and morally, the question about what is a woman is it's a nightmare. It's easy if it's not political for you, or if you're, like if you just answer it from a biological standpoint. But politically and morally, it's a nightmare because it's a test. It asks, whose side are you on? Are you willing to demonstrate your commitment to the side by telling an obvious lie? And then this one, are you fully trained in all the ways of justifying the lie?
Right.
And that is, isn't it? That is all of this. Sex is a spectrum. Puberty blockers are fully reversible. Just the same things that are trotted out every time. Are you trained up in being able to, like, in all of the stock responses of justifying this massive fucking lie?
Yeah.
That's what every single major religion is like, though. There's a sort of obvious falsehood at the center of every major faith. And that's why they're called faiths, because there has to be something that's kind of so dubious at the center of it that to assert your belief in it is to show that you're committing to your group to such a point that you're putting cost, because there's a social cost to lying, to saying you believe something that isn't true to anyone outside the group. But that's a statement to the people inside your group that you're invested in.
It's very true.
So there's a sort of something called like religious economics or something.
It's
Yeah.
so true of the politicians. The politicians basically just thought they could just say all this shit and signal their allegiance without it actually harming them in any way, because everybody wants to be nice, everybody's a good person. But then things like Adam Graham came along, and they're like, what? There's a very funny bit in a Chappelle thing recently where someone's doing one of these prepared bogus speeches about how comedy should be this or that, and this guy goes, but even jokes have consequences, and Chappelle goes, consequences. And that's how all these politicians are like, consequences. They're like, they've all just discovered that if you put a man in a women's prison, then the women might not like it. They've discovered that if you, what was the latest thing they tried and it got reversed? Garda. Fucking Irish cops don't like being told to lie, There's all these things going on, and everyone's going, no, fuck this. It's bullshit, It's brilliant. I'll tell you what's happening as well, and this is a really big moment, and I should have actually looked at it through this lens, through a class lens. But what's happening now is that different classes, apart from the middle class, are getting a good look at this stuff, and they don't like it. They do not like it. The gatekeepers, the people in every business and every institution who are kind of patrolling the halls and making sure that there's no TERFs around, their stranglehold is weakening a little bit, I think, So, so I guess like the thing to do, I guess, within everybody's, join SEEN if you're in the civil service, that's a great organization for GC people. Start to join these organizations that are like SEEN are out there and they're fighting hard for people, but they need they need memberships and they need support and they need to know that people have got their backs. It's true of everyone.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like I've been championing the Women's Rights Network now for a couple of years. I mean, that's been great. Really instrumental in getting women together, and the amount of stuff that goes on in the background. Writing letters. People getting together, groups of people writing letters, lobbying MPs, actually making a difference, changing things has been brilliant. And it is, and that is right. That is the way of doing it, isn't it? There's talking about it, and then there's joining and getting involved to change. Because look, I don't think that this thing would have happened if that Sex Matters petition hadn't been pushed, and it had got that 100,000 signatures that was needed, or 10,000 signatures, in order for the debate in Parliament to happen. And suddenly, there they are saying, okay, well, we will look at this. And it's just great. Like, we can change things.
Yes,
slow, and it's tedious, and it's so unnecessary, but it can be done, and it is happening.
It's happening because it's necessary because the media is not doing their job. I think most politicians are looking at all the broadsheets, and that's how they figure out what the tenor of the country is. And they're not getting the numbers that the media is reporting as though trans women are women and everybody's on board with this. And you need groups to come up with 100,000 signatures. Like Helen, you put together that you commissioned an actual poll, didn't you, a few years ago to get people's opinions on
back
something.
in 2018 it was. 18, 19, 20, 21, bloody hell, 6 years ago. And it was very clear that the message that was being pushed was completely wrong, and it's still, you look at YouGov, when it comes down to it, when somebody says, what if this bloke has a penis, everyone's like, no. The majority of people are still no, not in women's spaces. And in fact, I think now that the Isla Bryson thing, or whatever his name, Bryson thing, has happened, and it became everywhere, it became really mainstream, didn't it? This idea that people were trying to put men in women's prisons. Suddenly, it was there. People. I suspect if we asked people now, we would have moved a little, because the outcry was quite something. Like most normal people were like, "What? No, this is obviously wrong, isn't it?"
Yeah.
It's obviously wrong.
I know. It is crazy. I mean, fucking hell, as you say, 6 years of telling people that there's only two sexes. My God, I could never have come up with a comedy show as good as that idea.
Or as long running.
It's long running. Yes. Thank you, Helen. Hey, listen, we haven't even spoken about Murrell. We haven't spoken
about what?
Paul Murrell. Is that his name? What? Have I got his name wrong? Burrell? Is it Burrell or Murrell? What have I done? Have I made it fucking Scotland? What are you talking about? The police coming to... What? Do you not know?
No. I haven't seen this. What is... Tell us.
Nicola Sturgeon's
husband
has been arrested.
Oh, Nicola Sturgeon's husband. Yes,
What?
I didn't know what his name was.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgeon, you should have said. I'd have been all over it. Yes, he was arrested this morning.
Yeah.
For what?
It is Murrell. What the fuck? I was saying Paul Murrell for hours, and everyone's looking at me like I'm
That's because we didn't know his name.
Talking about the ambassador to Norway or something. Well, he's been arrested, and what's brilliant is this big...
For what?
Well,
financial irregularities, I think.
Here's the...
I think I've been hearing whispers around that for years, and I'm not even on your continent. So
do you know what the... Oh yeah, I'll tell you why you've been hearing whispers about it for years, Artie. It's because Wings Over Scotland fucking broke the story about 3 or 4 years ago. Basically, what it was where's this 100,000 or 60,000? Someone can help me there. Where's this large amount of money that was supposed to go into a kind of a war chest towards independence? Where's it gone? Right? He asked that question years ago, and then he was banned from Twitter around the same time. Isn't that interesting? And, this is
600,000. They're saying pounds.
600,000, yeah. He was banned from Twitter around the same time, and he sent DMs to a bunch of major journalists in Scotland about this issue with all the evidence that he had. They didn't even respond. And it's only today that his story, the seeds that he planted and stuff have come. If those journalists that he mentions had done their job, again, This could have been sorted out 2 or 3 years ago. But they circle the wagons around the SNP like nothing you've ever seen. If you really want to see, like, if you want to read that Wings, that latest, he might have done one since then, but I think it's his latest one about Paul Murrell. It's so interesting how that news was suppressed in Scotland. It's so interesting. Like,
Wow.
like you would think one of these journalists would go, "Oh yeah, where did £600,000 go?" You know?
Yeah, that's a lot of journalists who missed out on a huge scoop there. It reminds me of the movie Spotlight again, where it's sort of an open secret, but it's an open secret that's damaging the reputation of a group that you don't want to see damaged, so you just look the other way, you know?
Yeah. And I've just looked it up, and I want to say, so it was 107,000 people so far who have signed the Sex Matters petition.
Right.
And that's a lot, isn't it?
For legal definition, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Someone said that.
I mean, there are a lot of people who actually care. Just behind the scenes, there are huge numbers of people who are sort of waking up and saying, "This is wrong. What can I do about it?" And are frightened of speaking out. So many are, because we know exactly why. I mean, did you see there was that? It was a bunch of women who watched the film, the women. What is Woman film, and then some people complained. I think was it in Scotland? The dog. Some people complained, or somebody complained, and so now the brewery isn't going to supply them with beer, like the actual place. And you're like, what? This is freedom of association. You're actually trying to prevent freedom of association here, like a bunch of women, just by saying, "Oh well, because it's hate." It's hate speech. It's a hate film, and you're like, "Oh, what? It's all about like imagine if you were doing this for
black people
again, for opinions that you have." It's the most incredible short-sightedness, isn't it? And then you call, and then you point at other people and call them Nazis.
Yeah, they're the established. So they think that they're on the side of the underdogs, but they're the establishment. They're suppressing free speech. The minute your side is the side that thinks freedom of speech is a right-wing dog whistle, that's the minute that you're now in the establishment class. You now have all the power, and you're not. You have a different responsibility when you have the power. You have a responsibility to make sure that your opposing side gets a voice still, and that you don't suppress them. You disagree with them with arguments, but they're not doing that. Because it's the left doing this. For people who are ostensibly on the left, who are taking over everything and trying to suppress everything. It's really, really terrible and shocking. There's been this sort of polarity shift in who has the power, and the behavior now that many people on the progressive side of things have total control over the discourse. They are shutting down the discourse.
Is there anything that more reveals that than these guys turning off their replies? Stonewall cannot turn on replies. Nancy Kelly cannot turn on replies. No. None of these people can turn off on replies, because when they do, everybody asks them questions about things like the Tavistock, and they, as far as I can tell, are just pretending all that stuff isn't happening. It's basically it's like Peter Pan. They're holding each other up through the sheer power of belief, and at the moment that involves turning off replies. But those days are. I mean, those days are already over. I saw a very funny parody, and I'd love to. Maybe we should call this episode this after this. But there was not a parody, a meme. And it just had a person crying like this, and it just said, "I want no debate back."
That's great. Well, too bad.
Yeah,
we're having the debate and you're losing it.
Hey, listen, let's just pause here, because I keep thinking about it. I'm not sure about this. We shouldn't monetize these things, but sorry, Emily. Thank you, Emily. Hey, guys, can you wish Chad happy birthday, Chad? Happy day 69 of being a boy. Nice. He is doing a big celebration for the next episode.
Love you.
Love you, Chad. Okay. But we can't be doing this. This is no good. This is like we'll be hijacked, and
we'll be drinking Bud Light.
We appreciate the donations.
I'll be like reading. I'll be reading out things like, "You're divorced." Oh, okay. That's £10 to me. Oh, another person here saying, "I'm divorced. Thanks for the £5. Another James called me here, says I'm divorced. That's no, that you didn't actually, Kearney. James, I'm going to. But anything else? I mean, no. Okay, so Burrell. So I heard a very interesting theory. There was a tent in his big tent in his back garden. It looked more like Fred West's house. Someone said,
Really?
yeah. Someone said, I think we found the 30,000 missing members. You know, but it was like, someone thinks that probably what happened is that there might have been. Well, actually, we can't. Can we say we can speculate?
I don't know. I'm not sure. It's a live case.
Oh, I'm not sure we can speculate.
I don't think you can speculate.
Yeah, that's not. Look it up yourselves, folks. There's a tent somewhere.
Yeah. Gossip among yourselves, and you'll figure it out. What else is? I mean, there's been tons of stuff. Really, did you watch? Of course, Billboard Chris got attacked in
Canada. Was it
Canada,
Canada?
Yeah.
And
I believe so.
yes, it was
Vancouver.
really quite shocking, wasn't it? The police were just standing around. But then, but in New Zealand, they didn't even turn up.
Yeah, well, there's something weird. Like as I said on
the same thing over and over again. The establishment doesn't care. We have the power. The discourse means we're going to shut down opposing views. We're not going to protect their right to speak, and they're sneering about it. That cop is footage of a cop just openly gloating, like, we don't care. And the Vancouver Police Department had to be forced through massive outrage online to just acknowledge that they were going to investigate this. It's terrible. We're seeing this over and over and over again, where the police just don't care. Now that the police are now aligned with trans women or women and the LGBTQ++, although this has nothing to do with gay people, of course. And they're just completely not protecting the other side from having a voice.
I think cops want to run around chasing bad guys. They don't want to be out taking care of women who are trying to have freedom of speech.
But they also want to see themselves as virtuous. And if you're told that you're virtuous for being trans women or women, then they love it. And
my point is this. I don't
Yeah.
even think that's part of it. I think what it is they want an easy life. They don't like these women turning up because it causes trouble, and they want them to go home. And I think that had we not discovered that they were allowing women to be kettled at Hyde Park 2 weeks ago, we would still be in the same situation that we are. Women would still be in danger because the cops don't want to police this stuff. However, it has to be said, last Sunday there was a Hyde Park event, and the police were very, very good. There was a very heavy presence, but they kept it light in the actual crowd. And it made for a really lovely day. That was just kind of chilled, and we heard the speeches, and it was just great. So,
well, it'll be interesting to see how it moves forward, because I know Venice, Alan, and Julia Long went to see the police, but also that thing in New Zealand was everywhere. It is possible that they sort of thought, actually, we have to do something here. Now, it'll be interesting to see what the next one is like.
Well, like the thing is, they haven't been tested yet. I mean, basically, the test will be when Posey comes, because if Posey comes, they'll come. And, because of I have to say, efforts of people like Billy Bragg to make that situation worse. He should be ashamed of himself for the way he's behaved.
Yes, I agree. I actually agree.
Yeah. She's really has to take care of herself now. So, hopefully the cops saw some of the footage from New Zealand, which was so psychotically violent towards her, that they'll understand that, there's no actual sense behind this. This is just, a cult-like movement that's gone out of control. What I can't understand about it though is when these guys are at the protesting, they've all got umbrellas up, they've all got masks on, you can't see any of their faces. Why is that allowed? Why are masked men allowed to surround and terrify women? Surely there should be some sort of, like at Speaker's Corner, there should be some sort of rule that masks aren't allowed. Well, is Speaker's Corner really free for speakers if masked men can come in and attack someone?
Well,
someone pointed out, though, sorry, Helen, but last thing.
No, it's fine.
Someone pointed out, though, that it's a little difficult to tell people to take off masks when they've been told that it makes them a good person for 4 years, And what we have now is a kind of normalized mask culture amongst these protesters, There's, did you see there was one person who had who had like literally a mirror in front of their
Yes,
head.
I did see that. That was the strangest thing.
Yeah,
Almost like a full motorbike helmet thing.
it's like living in a graphic novel sometimes, you know. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And there were 3 there. They tried to cause trouble, and they were moved away quite quickly. But yeah, I just hope it continues like that. And I hope also, I should say, don't be off your guard, people. You know, don't stay alert. You know, last week might have been very peaceful and lovely, but you know, it might be something just to keep your eye open. You know. However, I do think the police presence is going to be kept up. So yeah, let's see how they do on Sunday, I guess. Sorry, anyway, rabbiting on now. Merle, we've done Merle. Who else do we need to do?
Who else has shamed themselves this week?
Well, there was that. I mean,
Talk of shame.
There was that. Just again, just from the other side, not the other side, but the other extreme. Matt Walsh did. Is it Matt Walsh's name?
Yes.
Yeah, he did a film. I think it was with young Americans, and when he was just brutally honest, saying actually, there are only 2 sexes, and the kids in the audience were kind of flummoxed.
Yeah.
Have you watched it? And
I have. It's amazing.
It's just so wrong. Like like teaching these kids and leading them to believe things that are, when they come up against reality aren't true, is terrible.
It's the indoctrination aspect.
Unequipped. They're completely unequipped to deal with people telling them the truth.
Do you know what I think? I think part of it is to do with the format. I don't think we have ever heard such silence surrounding the questions in that video. I've seen 3 videos so far. The trans people who are standing up to give testimony and the trans allies who are standing up to give testimony do so without interruption. It is absolutely respectful and dead silent. They get to say their piece. Same goes for Matt Walsh. So I don't know what they did, but they obviously applied some rules and everybody stuck to those rules. And what happened is, in the kind of silence that you get when you're actually allowed to speak about this stuff, it falls apart. It just falls apart because there's nothing behind it.
My favorite rule will always be you must answer whatever question you have been asked. If I ever get to debate anyone, I will set these rules that are, if I ask you a yes or no question, you must answer with a yes or a no. You must give a direct answer, because that will just destroy it instantly. When people have to open their mouths and give direct, straightforward answers instead of screaming and shouting, I could destroy someone within 2 minutes. I swear to God.
Yes, that's interesting, actually, because the written format on Twitter does allow people to just completely, just to send a link and not actually have to answer. People can obfuscate and just lie with impunity. Yes, I mean, maybe a sort of the I mean, that's why no debate, isn't it? That's why they had no debate for such a long time, because debate it just exposes it terribly.
Someone said this. Someone pointed this out as well. Sorry, folks. This is a good one. Teachers Union says school must support drag queen story hours. Could it be worth firing the person in the Teachers Union who has control of these decisions? Might that be an idea? Could that be an idea? What the fuck do drag queens have to do with children? Nothing.
Yeah.
It's fucking amazing. And the new Doctor Who looks like, it looks like what that signing session in Canada last night. There's a fucking drag queen in it. Of course there is. Fucking drag.
Russell T Davies is trying it all.
Space. Jesus Christ! Why not dig up Larry Grayson? Get Larry Grayson to be in it. Sorry, that's a really old reference. Fuck. Sometimes I forget how old I am, and I walk into one. Larry Grayson was a big one. Anyway, some people know what I'm talking about. But of course, Doctor Who is going full steam ahead. I think they have a trans man in it. I think they have a drag queen. And you know what? I think that is going to be a disaster for them, because
let's see.
It's going to come out around the same time, the Tavistock, the legal cases, and they're going to look very, very stupid. It's really going to be like they're wearing bell bottoms in the middle of the 80s, That's what.
It's
That's
definitely going to be
it is.
interesting in the future looking back. Yeah, I was
Mm.
thinking of your bell bottoms analogy. A lot of the stuff is going to look so dated and silly, just
Yeah.
so dated and silly. I think
Yeah.
especially if I think it was that show Shameless, where
also-
like, you know, like they introduced a female to male trans character who was supposed to date the gay guy and called him a faggot, and it was just like it was so insulting to gay men and so misrepresentative of gender dysphoria. It just seemed like just the whole thing was a train wreck of virtue signaling. It's already so terribly dated, but like when people go back to watch these shows 10, 20 years from now, they're just going to be like, oh God. You know, there's going to be a lot of jokes about that, though. It's going to be a lot of jokes. There's going to be lots of fodder for like, where were you in 2022?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very true.
We were all in our Zoom chats wearing our masks in 2020, and we were all talking about pronouns.
There's already a really good kind of contingent of comedian in America who are just kind of very brilliant at kind of navigating all the cancellation things. They're kind of uncancelable, a lot of them, you know, and it's kind of joyful watching them sometimes, you know. They just don't give a fuck about any of this stuff, and they're just being funny in whatever way they can, and it's really inspiring. One of them is that guy Shane Gillis, who was cancelled. He nearly got Saturday Night Live, and then they cancelled him before he did it. And
Yeah, I remember that.
he had Saturday Night Live for like 2 days, and he's just a really, really funny, sweet bloke, you know. But you know, they tried to destroy him, and he's just risen from the ashes. So
like J.K. Rowling, they've tried to destroy her, but
to be fair, it's easier when you're a fucking billionaire. I'm getting a little annoyed with this argument. Try not being a billionaire.
Well, but she's also, I mean, I don't know if you've listened to the podcast. She's so thoughtful, intelligent, and nuanced. It's you know, it's well worth listening to that podcast, the Witch Trials. It's really good.
Yeah, no, I must do.
Yeah, I still have an episode. The last 2, I think I have to watch if it's over now. But really good podcast, beautiful, moving. Every episode, I'd have a cry at least once every episode. Very, very moving, very beautifully done. But I haven't finished it yet. So.
Well, you know, my thing is just there's so much. I can try not to do anything about it when I can. It's just like every day is just spent thinking about this. So I'll wait till it's all over, and then I'll listen to it.
Well, it's hard because like I can't pull myself away from this train wreck. But even I try to like put on Netflix and watch some light television, and my brain is too busy wanting to know what's going on in the gender trenches. But then I try to watch a podcast about gender. Sometimes it's too upsetting. I have to put that away too. It's just got my brain totally in a
maybe
state.
you can come back over to London for a little trip.
Oh
yes, that would be nice.
Yes, let's make that happen. That might be. Which also reminds me, it's a very good time to be a member of my Substack.
Yes,
very good time to be a member of my Substack.
Graham Linehan Substack. If you become a paid member, it's a very good time indeed to do that.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Listen, will you guys hang around because I have to tell you something in 1 second?
Oh, okay.
Very quick. As for everybody else, you may go. Thank you. You may leave. And thank you.
It was really nice. The chat was, as usual, excellent. I've really enjoyed watching everyone talk. It's great.
As always, I'll be looking back at it now. Yeah.
And guys, lovely to see you.
All right, folks. Bye-bye. See you next time.